Trouble brewed the moment I saw Karen stomping across the manicured lawn at 6:57 a.m., her pastel pink jogging suit a beacon of agitation, ponytail bobbing like a metronome of fury. I just pulled in from a Costco run, groggy from too little sleep, arms full of bags, when she charged me, phone flashing photos of my car, the lawn, the pool gate, her glare so fierce I nearly dropped everything. I'd lived in this neighborhood a few months, long enough to hear whispers of the Homeowners Association's iron grip, short enough to dodge its drama, until now. Karen, the self-crowned HOA enforcer, was a legend here, her bloodhound nose for rule breakers unmatched, and that morning she'd locked onto me, muttering about newcomers and pool violations through clipped teeth, words lost in traffic hum. I shrugged it off, too tired to decode her, but her intensity stuck with me, an omen of storms ahead I couldn't yet fathom. Later that day, craving sun, I hit the community pool. Not a grand affair, but tidy, framed by trimmed hedges, lounge chairs, a lone palm whispering in the breeze. I'd barely spread my towel when Karen's throat-clearing sliced the calm, her silhouette at the gate, arms akimbo, sunglasses perched like a judge's gavel. "Good afternoon," I ventured, voice neutral despite the prickle in my gut. She skipped pleasantries, unleashing a tirade about unauthorized guests, trash, liability, her eyes boring into me like I'd masterminded a crime wave. I hadn't a clue what she meant. No guests, no trash, just me and a plastic water bottle. But she didn't pause for breath, let alone my defense. I tried asking what I'd done, but she ignored me, whipping out a clipboard from her tote, flipping pages of highlighted rules, paper clips rattling like tiny alarms. "Rule 7B, no glass containers," she barked. I pointed to my plastic bottle. "Rule 2F, no more than 2 guests." I said I was alone. She glowered, unfazed, as if facts were optional, her mission to strangle the neighborhood with every bylaw she could wield. It hit me then, this wasn't about me. It was her crusade to chokehold the community, and I'd stumbled into her crosshairs. Anger mixed with bewilderment churned inside as I sat there, a quiet afternoon hijacked by scrutiny I hadn't earned. Days passed uneventfully. I brushed it off as a fluke, hopping to dodge her spotlight. My neighbor Terry, a grizzled veteran of her reign, filled me in. "They call her the HOA hawk, swoops on anyone out of line." He regaled me with tales. Finding an elderly couple for trash cans lingering curbside, threatening a family over a swing set. Unapproved, hue enough to make me paranoid. I checked my bins, matched my porch light to the HOA's color chart, laid low, figuring avoidance was my shield. But a nagging itch told me her next strike would be bolder, more personal, trouble simmering just below the surface, waiting to boil over. That premonition proved prophetic when my cousin Jason, a retired Navy SEAL, rolled into town Saturday with 2 buddies, Manny and Vince, fresh from Coronado's amphibious base, all easy smiles despite their hardcore pasts. They, driven cross-country, craving a poolside unwind. We hit the pool late afternoon, sun dipping, shadows stretching. Towels hit chairs, they joked, ready to dive, and I half expected Karen but pushed it aside. I was a resident, they were my guests. Rules allowed it, nothing to fret, right? Wrong, barely had Manny dipped a toe when Karen's voice rang out, sharp as a siren, bursting through the gate with her clipboard, orange visor blazing, demanding proof these unregistered men belonged. My heart sank. Here we go again, her petty tyranny about to crash into something far tougher than she'd bargained for. Karen's voice sliced through the poolside calm like a whip crack, her orange visor a garish crown as she stormed the gate, clipboard clutched like a battle standard. Jason, Manny, and Vince froze mid-laugh, towels dangling, exchanging baffled glances as she barked for proof they were registered guests, her tone more accusation than question. I felt my stomach twist, that familiar prickle of dread blooming as Manny, half-submerged, rested his arms on the pool's edge, water dripping. The SEAL's easygoing vibe clashed hard with her rigid fury, and the air thickened with awkwardness. I stepped up, voice steady despite the pounding in my chest. "They're my guests. HOA rules allow up to 4. They've got every right to be here." Karen's eyes narrowed, lips curling. She snapped that I was capped at 2 guests, a lie the guidelines didn't back, then pivoted to a fresh gripe. They hadn't showered first. Manny, ever the stickler, pointed out he'd rinsed off at the outdoor shower. She sneered, dismissing him, circling the pool like a predator, pen clicking on her clipboard like gunfire. Jason's posture tightened, that subtle SEAL readiness flickering. Nobody wanted a fight, but Karen was poking a bear with a stick. Vince, the peacemaker, tried humor, flashing a half salute. "Ma'am, we're just here for a quiet swim, no trouble." She didn't flinch, her gaze raking them with suspicion, then unleashed a barrage of nonsense. Alcohol in their cooler glass bottles, disturbing the peace, each charge wilder than the last. I gaped as she whipped out her phone, declaring she'd call the police, my breath caught over a swim. Her relish in flexing power chilled me, malice glinting in her eyes. The SEALs traded looks, confusion morphing to frustration. High-stakes missions they'd handled, but this, absurd. Manny hauled himself out, water streaming off his broad frame, standing calm beside her rigidity. He offered his ID, voice level. "I'm a retired Navy SEAL visiting a resident, my friends too." Karen froze for a heartbeat, a flicker of something, fear, recognition. Crossing her face, then doubled down. "Anyone can claim that doesn't make you special," and punched numbers into her phone, undeterred. The next 10 minutes were a fever dream. Karen toggled between yelling into her phone and glaring death at us, snippets like trespassing, unauthorized, threatening men cutting through. Jason paced, jaw tight, when he clenched his fists. Vince rubbed his face in disbelief. Neighbors peeked over the fence, drawn by her shrieks. Some knew the SEALs from earlier hellos, but none dared cross her. Her iron grip, forged by HOA fear, silenced them. Then squad cars rolled up, lights flashing, no sirens. 2 officers stepped out, one tall and broad, the other shorter, cautious. Karen pounced, pointing at us with theatrical sweeps, my heart thudding as law enforcement waded into this HOA madness. The SEALs shifted aside, poised yet calm. Years of real threats honed them for this, but irritation simmered. Why was a pool dip spiraling into this? The tall officer took charge, asking for our stories. Karen unleashed a tirade, branding my guests troublemakers, outsiders flouting her shower rule, hinting they'd trash the place, her voice quavering with righteous venom. Jason spoke measured. "We're guests of a homeowner, followed rules, not here to cause issues." Manny opened the cooler. "Just bottled water, no booze, no glass." Vince added softly they were SEALs, maybe why Karen flipped. The officers swapped glances. The tall one turned to me. "Ma'am, these your guests." I nodded hard, giving my name, address, citing the 4-guest rule. Karen cut in, waving a printout of official regulations like a smoking gun. The officer skimmed it, eyebrow arching. Her bluster faltered under his gaze, and I sensed a crack in her armor. This was about to get wilder, and I wasn't sure if I'd sink or swim. The tall officer held Karen's printout, his eyebrow still cocked as her voice pitched higher, insisting we'd broken rules that didn't exist. Jason, Manny, and Vince stood damp and composed, their SEAL calm a stark contrast to her unraveling. The shorter officer peeled off to hear her side, while the tall one pulled Manny aside, checking IDs with a nod. I clutched my towel, pulse racing as neighbors peered through the fence, a silent jury to this HOA circus. Then Marcus, a jogger I'd seen at dawn, shouted from behind the rails, voice cutting through. "She's been targeting everyone for weeks, any excuse to report us." He spilled tailies, Karen scolding him for unauthorized pool shoes, threatening a lifeguard with the health department over attitude, and heads nodded, a ripple of defiance stirring the onlookers. It was the first time I'd seen her rein crack, voices rising where fear once ruled. Karen flushed red, sputtering we were against her, clinging to her, keeping us safe mantra, but the officers' faces hardened. Her grip was slipping. The tall officer silenced her with a raised hand, voice firm. "Ma'am, calling police for non-emergencies is inappropriate, could mean consequences." He handed back her rules, pointing out her guest limit was wrong, her lips thinned, eyes wide, shock swallowing her bluster. Then the gate banged open. Eddie, a local blogger, burst in, camera rolling, introducing himself with a grin. "Suburban drama uncensored." Karen shielded her face with her clipboard, barking at him to leave private property. But he circled, filming squad cars, wet SEALs, shell-shocked neighbors. The stakes spiked, her defiance warring with panic. The tall officer sighed, nudging Eddie to the sidewalk. He complied, lens still trained on Karen, who ranted about trespassing SEAL liars. Manny, fed up, flipped open his wallet, flashing a naval insignia. Not official ID, but enough. The officers nodded, returning it, her glare sharpened, magic failing. She pivoted, demanding a guest fee she claimed existed, fumbling her clipboard for proof that wasn't there. I'd never heard of it, nor had anyone. The officer's patience frayed. The tall one cut in, voice steel. False charges and repeat calls could land you in trouble. Stop. Karen quieted, stunned, as if no one had ever checked her. The officers ruled no crime, no threat, just a petty spat, and warned her again about baseless complaints before rolling out. Relief washed over the crowd, but her final glare at us was ice cold, a promise of more as she huffed off, clipboard dangling. Days buzzed with aftermath. My phone lit up with neighbors' texts, the pool clash a hot topic. Relief mingled with dread as Karen's meltdown spread, her daily emails to the HOA board whining about security threats leaking out. Jason, Manny, and Vince ducked out to tour the state, but Manny vowed to return soon. I braced for her next swing, sensing her petty war wasn't done. Wednesday night, chopping onions, my phone rang, Manny breathless. She's chained the pool shut, sign says closed until further notice, trespassers prosecuted. My jaw dropped. This was sabotage beyond her power, and I felt anger flare, game on. We met at the gate in 30, me, Manny, a knot of residents staring at the padlock chain, Karen's laminated sign scrawled with her signature. Kids pouted, parents fumed, and Manny urged photos for proof. Glenn, a dad fed up, called HOA President Martha Jacobs, fair, no nonsense, on speaker. She was appalled, promising to arrive fast. Her SUV screeched up, Martha stepping out crisp and commanding, eyeing the lock with disgust. Unacceptable. Karen lurked by the hedges, caught. Martha tried her master keys, none fit. She ordered a locksmith, turning to Karen. This violates bylaws, you've no authority. Karen snapped it was public safety, citing my unknown men. But Martha stood firm, the crowd backing her, tension coiling. Karen's rein teetered, and I felt the tide turn. Martha's voice cut through the poolside standoff like a blade, her stern calm pinning Karen where she stood by the hedges. Residents flanked the gate, phones snapping the chained lock and laminated sign, kids tugging at parents' sleeves, the air thick with defiance. Glenn's call had summoned her, and now Martha faced Karen head-on. You've no authority to close the pool, that's board, only for real emergencies, not this. Karen clutched her clipboard, face reddening, insisting it was safety, ranting about my unknown men breaching rules. Martha didn't blink. Show me the bylaw. Karen waved her papers, but the crowd's crossed arms and murmurs drowned her bluster. The spell was breaking, her solo crusade cracking under scrutiny. The locksmith rolled up, tools clinking. He sized up the padlock, asked who'd set it, and when fingers pointed to Karen, he shrugged, snipping the chain in seconds. It clattered to the concrete, the sign fluttering down, irrelevant. Karen shrieked it was her property, but Martha countered. It's on community land, illegal. Karen's lips pursed, fury boiling as Martha turned to us. The pool's open, enjoy it responsibly. Then to Karen, voice tight. I'm calling a board meeting about your conduct, expect a notice. Karen stammered, blaming me and my mystery guests, but residents piped up tales of her harassing kids, bullying over yard decor, petty fines. Her gaze darted, finding no allies, just a wall of fed-up faces. With a huff, she stormed off, clipboard flapping like a broken wing. Victory tingled, but unease lingered. She wasn't the type to quit. That night on my porch with Manny, iced tea in hand, we dissected it. He pegged her as obsessed with control, predicting more chaos. This isn't over. His phone buzzed. Vince sent a link. Eddie's YouTube video of the police clash was live, slickly edited, Karen's contradictions glaring, views climbing fast, comments roasted her, and we grinned, half worried. The internet could amplify this beyond our block. Next morning, whispers flew. Karen was livid about the video, Shannon texting she might sue Eddie for defamation. Manny rolled his eyes. No case, truth's her enemy. Still, her legal threats stirred the pot, tension simmering as the HOA emailed about an emergency meeting Friday at the clubhouse. Anticipation buzzed. Would she face real consequences? Friday hit and I walked in with Manny, his exit delayed to see this through. Cars jammed the lot, rare for these meetings. Inside, folding chairs creaked under residents, the 5-member board up front, Martha at the helm. Karen slipped in late, head high, defiance etched in her stride. Martha opened with procedure, but the room leaned forward when she shifted to unilateral closure of amenities. She read a statement. The chain, the sign, false police calls. Karen sat stony, my pulse thudding as the floor opened, voices rising like a tide. Neighbors unloaded, her scaring kids with pool checks, bullying over mailboxes, a bird feeder violation note to an old man. Glenn dropped a bomb. She'd harassed his teen daughter over a too bright swimsuit, filing a formal complaint. Another cited pool security footage, proof stacking high. Karen stiffened, pinned by the deluge. Martha cut in. Given this, we'll decide disciplinary action, suspension, fines, maybe a legal bar from facilities. Karen leapt up, voice trembling. You're conspiring, I'm protecting us. She jabbed at me, rehashing my dangerous guests. Nobody bit. Manny rose, calm as steel. Manny Rivera, retired Navy SEAL, I'll file a restraining order if she keeps harassing us. His words landed like a gavel. Karen slumped, bluster gone, the threat sinking in. The board voted. A hefty fine, 3-month pool key ban, more if she pushed it. Murmurs of relief broke the silence. She glared at me, Manny, the room then bolted, door slamming. A taste of justice, sharp and real. Karen's exit slammed the clubhouse door with a clang that echoed through the room. A final note to her unraveling. Residents exhaled, murmurs swelling into cautious relief as the board's ruling sank in. A steep fine, her pool key yanked for 3 months, a legal line drawn against further stunts. Martha's steady gaze swept us, her enjoy responsibly lingering like a promise. For so long, Karen's petty reign had choked the neighborhood. Trash can fines, swing set wars, bird feeder threats. Now we'd cracked her grip, voices rising where silence once cowered. I caught Manny's eye, his seal calm, unshaken. He'd faced worse than a clipboard tyrant, yet his restraining order threat had tipped the scales, leaving her stunned. We spilled out into the night, grabbing dinner with Glenn and a few others, toasting sanity's return over burgers, talk drifting to work, hobbies, normalcy. A unity forged in her chaos, sweet after weeks of strain. The weekend hummed at the pool, kids splashed, parents chatted, laughter bouncing off the water. Karen's absence was a void, her key ban a quiet triumph. No lurking visor, no clipboard clicks, just residents reclaiming what was theirs. Some pitied her public fall, but most nodded she'd earned it, her aggression a boomerang that finally struck back. Manny, Jason, and Vince packed up soon after, satisfied the storm had passed. Manny and I strolled the block one last time, the unlocked gate gleaming in dusk. Feels peaceful without her prowling, he said, pausing by the pool. I nodded, a warm rush of victory in my chest. We'd faced her down, not just for us, but for everyone she'd bullied. He mused on fighting injustice, even petty ones masked as concern. A SEAL's take, but it fit. This suburban skirmish had tested us, pulling neighbors tight, proving small battles could forge real bonds. Eddie's video exploded online, views soared, comments piling up, outsiders gawking at the HOA Karen meltdown. What some saw as drama, we felt as truth. A spotlight on power's abuse, no matter how trivial. It showed unity. Might too, once we spoke, her rule shattered fast. By Monday, word spread she'd tried appealing the fine, shot down flat, her dues garnished instead. Her forced break from amenities clipped her wings, no pool or tennis court policing allowed, and folks had the green light to report her if she tried. Summer eased toward fall, tension fatting, replaced by a lightness I hadn't known here. Neighbors waved, kids biked, the paranoia she'd sown lifting like fog. Karen wasn't gone, but her sting was dulled, her threats hollow against the board's hammer and our collective will. One sunny afternoon, a letter arrived from Naval Amphibious Base Coronado. Manny's old commanding officer, tipped off by him, thanked us for honoring his SEALs as guests, not intruders. He wrote of small battles revealing character, a nod that warmed me. I tucked it away, a keepsake of this wild ride. Looking back, fate had spun a thread from HOA rules to pink jogging suits to a poolside clash that bared Karen's arrogance. Her iron fist crumbled under its own weight, and we'd nudged it down. Manny's crew diving in had sparked it, freezing her in fury, only to thaw her control into nothing. I'd landed here months ago, clueless to the HOA's grip, but now stood with neighbors who'd found their spine. Her petty power met its match, not just in SEALs, but in a community that said enough. A karmic arc sealed when she locked that gate, never guessing we'd unlock more than a pool. Summer's end draped the neighborhood in a mellow hush, the pool's laughter fatting to soft ripples as kids traded swimsuits for school bags. Karen's shadow, once a constant loom, had shrunk, her fine paid, her key privileges a distant memory. The board's ruling held firm, a leash on her meddling, and residents savored the quiet, no clipboard ambushes or gate-side lectures. I'd catch glimpses of her pink jogging suit darting past curtains, a ghost of her old patrol, but she kept her distance. Whether licking wounds or plotting, I couldn't tell. The HOA, under Martha's steady hand, steered clear of my doorstep, their garden pitch still floating, untested. Manny's letter from Coronado sat on my shelf, a quiet trophy. His officer's words about character in small fights rang true. This wasn't just a pool spat, but a stand that reshaped us, a community unbowed by her petty throne. Eddie's video kept buzzing online, a digital echo of her fall, views ticked up, comments piling, some locals chiming in with their own Karen tales, turning our clash into a suburban saga. Neighbors leaned into the shift. Glenn's daughter strutted her bright swimsuit sans harassment. Marcus jogged in peace. The old man's bird feeder chirped unthreatened. Folks who ducked her wrath now nodded my way, a silent thanks for sparking the revolt. I'd landed here a newcomer, blind to the HOA's chokehold, but that first morning, Karen snapping pics of my car, had pulled me in. Now I was part of something bigger, a thread in a tapestry woven when Manny's crew dove in, her control freezing, then cracking under their calm defiance and our rising voices. The pool gate stood unlocked, a symbol. Her chain snipped, her sign dust, her rein a cautionary tale whispered over fences. Some said she'd tried suing Eddie, but Manny's scoff held. No case, just noise. Her legal bluffs fizzled, the board's sanctions a brick wall she couldn't scale. One evening, Terry, my next-door sage, leaned over the fence, beer in hand. HOA Hawks grounded. First time in years I ain't checking my trash cans twice. We laughed, the ease of it new. He'd watched her terrorize the block, swing sets, trash fines, porch lights. Now he saw a shift, her absence a vacuum we filled with normalcy. I thought of Jason, Manny, Vince, SEALs who'd faced real stakes, yet here their quiet swim had toppled a tyrant. Manny's last words stuck. Fight the little injustices, they matter. He was right, this wasn't war, but it tested us, drew out grit and unity I hadn't expected from a cul-de-sac. The letter from Coronado tied it neat. Our welcome to them, their stand with us, a ripple from pool to base. Karen's petty power met its match not just in their creds, but in neighbors who'd had enough, her karmic bill due when she locked that gate, blind to the tide she'd unleashed. Fall crept in, leaves skittering across lawns, and I stood by the pool one dusk, its stillness a mirror to the calm we'd won. No visor glaring, no rules barked, just water lapping the edge. The hawk was caged, her wings clipped by her own overreach, and we'd soared free. She thought us soft, newbies and old-timers alike, ripe for her rulebook. But that chain, that sign, her police calls, they'd backfired, exposing her to a community that finally spoke. I breathed the cooling air, feeling the weight of those weeks, anger, dread, then triumph, lift. The pool wasn't hers anymore, nor the block. It was ours, reclaimed not by force, but by standing firm, a lesson sealed when seals dove in and her world thawed, leaving her stranded, us whole. Fall settled over the neighborhood like a soft blanket, lawns browning, the pool's summer buzz a memory as cooler air swept in. Karen's rain felt like a distant storm, her pink jogging suit a rare flicker behind blinds, her influence gutted by the board's hammer. The fines stung, her key bands stuck, and whispers said she'd appealed again, only to crash against Martha's unyielding wall. Residents stretched into the freedom. Glenn's daughter splashed in peace, Marcus jogged unshaken, Terry's trash can sat bold past dusk. I'd catch smiles from folks who'd once ducked her gaze, a quiet nod of thanks for lighting the fuse. I'd stumbled into this HOA maze months back, half asleep that Costco morning when she'd snapped my car. Now I was woven in, a newcomer turned linchpin in her downfall, tied to a community that found its roar when Manny's SEALs dove in, her control icing over, then shattering under our weight. Eddie's video lingered online, a relic of that poolside clash. Views climbed, comments a mix of laughs and cheers, locals adding their Karen woes, making it a neighborhood badge. Some saw entertainment, but for us it was proof. Petty power crumbles when you call it out, unity a blade sharper than her clipboard. The board chastened, floated no new gripes. Martha's garden idea hovered, a peace flag I eyed warily, but no fines, no letters. The pool gate yawned open, unchained, a testament to our pushback. Her laminated sign long trashed, her lock snipped, her myth busted. One crisp evening I leaned on my porch, sipping coffee, watching leaves skitter. Terry ambled over. First fall I ain't paranoid about my porch light, Hawks clipped. We grinned, Her absence was a gift, years of her nitpicking, swing sets, bird feeders, trash. Erased by a stand we'd barely planned, sparked when seals swam and she froze. Manny's Coronado letter sat framed now, a nod from his officer tying our suburban scrap to something bigger. Character shines in small fights, he'd said, and it had. Jason, Manny, Vince hadn't sought a war, just a dip, but their calm cracked her facade, letting us finish the job. I'd felt it that Wednesday, Manny's call, the chained gate, her sign a taunt. We'd rallied, Martha's key failing, the locksmith snip a gong. She'd overplayed, locking out not just me, but everyone, and we'd unlocked more than a pool. Neighbors bonded in the fallout. Glenn's burgers, Terry's beers, kids biking free. Her tyranny had forged us, a silver lining to her spite. I'd landed here clueless, but that first glare, her poolside rant, pulled me in, and now I belonged, part of a block that stood when it mattered. Her karmic debt cashed when she misjudged us all. One dusk, I walked the pool's edge, water still, reflecting a sky bruising purple. No visor loomed, no rules barked, just quiet. The hawk was grounded, her wings torn by her own claws, and we'd risen not with fists but voices, a collective no she couldn't outshout. She'd banked on our silence, newcomer too green, old-timers too tired. But that chain, those police calls, her guest fee lie, they'd boomeranged, her arrogance the rope that hanged her. I breathed deep, the fight's echo fatting, dread, anger, then triumph. A lesson carved in that open gate. Petty tyrants fall when you stand, especially with seals at your back. Her pool grab failed, her power iced out by 3 men who swam and a neighborhood that woke. I smiled, the air crisp, the block ours again, her shadow just a story we'd tell, a cautionary laugh over winter fires. Winter whispered in, frosting the lawns, the pool a silent slab under a tarp as the neighborhood hunkered into quiet. Corinne's ghost faded, her pink jogging suit a rare blur, her reign a tale told over coffee cups. The board's sanctions held, her fine carved from dues, her pool key a lost privilege, appeals dead in Martha's firm hands. Kids biked free, Glenn's daughter strutted her colors, Terry's cans lingered curbside. Her shadow lifted, replaced by a camaraderie she'd unwittingly forged. I'd rolled in months back, bleary from Costco, her lens in my face a rude hello. Now I was part of this, a spark in her downfall, tied to a block that roared when seals swam and her grip froze, then shattered. Eddie's video hummed online, a legend now. Views soared, comments a chorus of serves her right. Our suburban clash a beacon. It wasn't just drama, but a mirror, power's petty when you face it down, unity its kryptonite. The gate stood wide, unchained, her laminated sign landfill dust. Martha's HOA steered clear, their garden pitch a faint echo, no match for our stand. Neighbors waved, a nod of thanks for cracking her shell, letting them breathe. Manny's framed letter glowed on my wall, Coronado's nod to our welcome, a salute to small battles shaping souls. Jason, Manny, Vince hadn't hunted this fight, just a swim, but their dive iced her out, our voices thawing her rule into ruin. I'd felt it that Wednesday. Her chain, her sign, a dare we met with Martha's key, the locksmith snip, a crowd's resolve. She'd locked us out, blind to the tide, and we'd unlocked a strength she couldn't cage. Fall's chats, Glenn's grill, Terry's beers wove us tight, her spite a glue we hadn't sought. I'd been the new kid, dodging her hawk eyes, but that poolside rant, her police bluff, pulled me in, and now I belonged, forged in a skirmish that proved us. One snowy dusk, I stood by the covered pool, breath fogging. Silence reigned, no visor, no clipboard, just peace. The hawk was downed, her claws dulled by her own swing, and we'd soared not with rage but right, a collective stand she'd misread. She pegged me soft, the seal's intruders, the block meek. Her chain, her guest fee lie, her police calls, they'd ricocheted, her arrogance the trap that snared her. I inhaled the chill, the fight's arc clear, dread to defiance to triumph. A lesson etched in that open gate, tyrants tumble when you rise, seals or not. Her pool grab crashed, her power melted by 3 men who swam and a neighborhood that woke. The air bit crisp, the block hours, her myth a laugh we'd share, a karmic arc sealed when she locked that gate, never guessing we'd free more than a swim. If anyone asks, I'll tell it straight. When the HOA Corinne blocked my pool, she didn't see Navy SEALs diving in, thawing her reign with a splash. She thought rules were her throne, but we proved petty power bows to a united will. From her first glare to her last huff, fate spun a clash, pink suits, locked gates, a tyrant undone by her own hand. Manny's crew sparked it, but we finished it, her frost no match for our fire. The pool's tarp gleamed under snow, the clubhouse hummed with plans, and I smiled. Newcomer turned neighbor, part of a tale where justice swam in, unexpected, unyielding. The hawk was history, the block alive, and that letter from Coronado whispered truth. Small stands matter, and this one left us whole, her lesson learned, our legacy won. A swim that sank her, a community that rose.